This Honorable House now resumes its sitting. Honorable members, we have spent a long day as we review clause by clause the Virgin Islands Cannabis
Licensing Act 2020. We read a third time and passed as amended, Mr. Speaker. I just want to thank everyone who worked hard to have this done. And Mr. Speaker, this is only for medicinal cannabis, and it is not giving a license for everyone to, or freedom for everyone to just use marijuana. This is not what it's about, Mr. Speaker. It is for the medicinal cannabis licensing industry, a new industry, and where we're going to help with our people with employment, but also help with the medicinal context of it. So I want to make that abundantly clear because there's a lot of miscommunications, so to speak, or misinformation about it. And I want to make it clear, Mr. Speaker, this does not, when it's passed, mean that everyone can smoke anywhere and do what they want with cannabis. This is strictly for the medicinal cannabis industry, and our people will be able to be involved in this, Mr. Speaker, in some significant ways. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to second the motion.
Thank you, honorable members. It has been moved and seconded that the bill entitled Virgin Islands Cannabis Licensing Act 2020 be now read a third time and pass as amended. Those in favor?
Aye.
Those against? The ayes have it. I call upon the clerk to read the bill for a third time.
This act may be cited as the Virgin Islands Cannabis Licensing Act 2020.
The bill has been read a third time and passed with amendments. I call upon the Deputy Premier and Minister for Health and Social Development.
Yes, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker.
Can we go on 1 minute recess? House is now in recess. Yeah. I call upon the Deputy Premier and Minister for Health and Social Development.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I beg to move for the second and third reading of the bill entitled Drugs, Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2020. Mr. Speaker, I move that the bill shortly entitled Drugs, Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2020 be read a second time. And as I here, Mr. Speaker, I would like to just say a few words in introduction of this bill. Mr. Speaker, record will have it that this House, this bold House, took the bold steps of passing the Virgin Islands Cannabis Licensing Act 2020, and the Premier just moved that third reading, and it was passed through the House without dissent. A bold move, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, when we make laws in the House of Assembly, equity, consistency, and fairness cannot be mere buzzwords. They must be practiced. As we seek to amend the Drugs Prevention of Misuse Act 2020 in the spirit of consistency with the Virgin Islands Cannabis Licensing Act, except where the Director of Public Prosecution determines on the basis of evidence that there is intention to supply cannabis or cannabis resin contrary to the Virgin Islands Cannabis Licensing Act passed in this House just minutes ago, the possession of not more than a defined quantity of cannabis or cannabis resin shall not be prosecuted. In that regard, Mr. Speaker, Clause 2 of the Amendment Act provides for the insertion of new sections 28A through 28E, into the Principal Act, Cap 178, revised edition 30th June 2013. Clause 28, Mr. Speaker, would provide for the possession of limited amounts of cannabis or cannabis resin, allowing for the possession of cannabis of not more than that defined in the Act to be expunged from a person's criminal record by the Commissioner of Police, among other matters. Clause 28B would provide for the eligibility of expungement. 28C, Mr. Speaker, would provide the factors to be considered by the courts, such as the petitioner's age, their age at the time of the offense, the time since the conviction, and the adverse consequences the petitioner would suffer if their application was denied. Clause 28D would provide for expungement of a criminal record of all official records of arrest, pleas, trial conviction, supervision of expungement, and 28E, Mr. Speaker, would provide for no liability or action shall lie against the government. Mr. Speaker, the amendments proposed make it legal for persons who need the legal framework to access cannabis for medical purposes. Like many other jurisdictions, we are finding that there is an anomaly or an imbalance that is being created and which must be addressed earliest as possible. There are often a large number of persons who would have ended up in courts and the prison systems for possession of very small quantities of cannabis, such as the range of the volume we are seeking to decriminalize through the medical marijuana legislation that was passed here in this honorable House. If one reflects on court records or on media records, notwithstanding common or chronic abuses, it is not uncommon to find that persons who were held by the police with small quantities of cannabis plead that they may have acquired the cannabis for medical relief. They may have had glaucoma, migraines, or they may be a cancer patient who is dealing with pain from chemotherapy. These quantities and these reasons are in line with the very same conditions and situations that we are now seeking to decriminalize today. Those would have been criminal acts prior to the legislation, but now we are seeking to say the usage is not without reason, medical reasons. It is clear that there is a disparity with someone who is already facing a charge or on trial for small quantities, remaining on trial or being convicted and made to pay fines or face jail time on, say, Friday, for an act that on the following Monday would be no longer a criminal act. Mr. Speaker, you can also see the disparity created where, similarly, a person who has such a conviction on their record is walking around with a stain on their name. They cannot get a police certificate. They are debarred from accessing certain opportunities, such as a mayor job. But someone else who commits the same act after the decriminalization takes effect does not face the same obstacles. Mr. Speaker, this is why the fair thing to do is to level the playing field and to implement a mechanism that would remove that blemish and to remove any anomalies whereby prosecutions may be taking place in the court for actions committed prior to the decriminalization, while no such actions would apply for the same activities after the law is passed. That, in simple terms, Mr. Speaker, is the philosophy behind what we are trying to achieve. We can discuss the merits of the specified volumes of plant materials and resin, and we can change those volumes from time to time. But we have to first agree on the rationale, which, in my opinion, is very straightforward. It is also necessary to clarify what your government is seeking to do. These amendments are not without merit, and these amendments do not liken us to the Sodom and Gomorrah principle that some members have displayed, said them not politicizing it, but the judge is out, the jury is out. In the first instance, Mr. Speaker, the Honorable Premier was clear and detailed when he explained that there is a distinction that must be made between the cannabis that is associated with recreational drug use and that of medical cannabis, of which these amendments seek to address. The benefits to be derived must be explored, and for the record, we cannot seek to classify sins into degrees of big sin and degrees of small sins. The only question that we seek to clarify are these amendments with or without merit. Mr. Speaker, as the Honorable Premier went to pains to point out for the honorable members, the marijuana plant is comprised of over 100 chemicals. And I must say that the Honorable Minister for Education and for Agriculture did extensive research. And I am totally impressed with the research that he's done. In fact, I would have gone the distance. Name it the Dr. Natalia so on the Virgin Islands medical bill right away. But time will come. Mr. Speaker, as I mentioned, the Premier went to great pains in explaining that the marijuana plant is comprised of over 100 chemicals known as cannabinoids, each of which has different effects on the body. The two main chemicals used in the medicinal application of marijuana are, and I'll use the short terms, just for pronunciation. THC. This is the physioactive active compound in marijuana, the elements that produces the high, it is said. And we have CBD. This substance does not produce any psychoactive effects. It is proven. Medical marijuana has a high CBD content. So when persons use it, they do not feel the euphoria that is associated with the recreational counterparts. Recreational marijuana, Mr. Speaker, is used without medical justification. Recreational marijuana usually has more THC content than the medical variety, as this is what provides users with the high. The BVI is not going into the business of pot. Let's make it clear. Let's make it precise. This act that we have passed just minutes ago is for medical purposes, Mr. Speaker. We are establishing a medical industry that facilitates the regulated use of cannabis for treating ailments. The industry is not going to be a free for all. There is going to be regulatory mechanism. We have made it clear that the medical marijuana is not going to give the kind of high that recreational users are looking for. So recreational users really ought to have no serious intent in medical marijuana because it is not going to fulfill the expectations. Systems will be in place to ensure that it is only the strains that are required for the medical market that will be cultivated. In order for international buyers to agree to purchase the product or the particular products associated with the plant, the chemical composition has to be correct. If you plant other undesirable strains in your field, you can contaminate the field and you will lose all the money and time you have invested as a farmer. The payday will not come if you break the rules. If you indulge in illegal cultivation, you will be found out. And if you are found out, Mr. Speaker, you are taking a huge risk of losing your license to cultivate. You will be losing your business opportunity and you will be prosecuted and sent to jail after extraction of the funds and fines associated with the criminal act. Mr. Speaker, the facts are clear. There really is no incentive for the serious farmers to break the rules or try to supply recreational marijuana. Where the use is concerned, your government has been very clear. It will not be legal to give cannabis to minors. Persons will only be permitted to use medical cannabis in their homes. Only licensed dispensaries will be permitted to legally dispense. The man in a trench coat, baseball hat, or down some dark alley will not be legally dispensing any medicine or medical cannabis. Volumes above a certain limit will require a doctor's prescription. Volumes below a certain limit will not require a prescription, but this quantity will be too small for anyone to do any trading at all, and distribution to make money other than that of operating a legal dispensary, Mr. Speaker. Persons requiring these small amounts will have to complete a self-declaration form to be verified. From this, you can discern if someone is engaged in irregular activities or abusing the process. But which recreational user is going to buy the black market cannabis that cannot get them high. It is a deterrent that we look in. There are other safeguard factors that really sums up the whole argument. Which recreational users are going to buy black market cannabis that cannot get them high? This is not going to be, there is not going to be any market for medical cannabis except for medical usage, because it does not do the recreational charge that would be otherwise. Full stop. Medical cannabis. If members can appreciate this point, then we can advocate the discussion into the social and economic benefits that medical marijuana will have for the territory and our people. We are reading and seeing where the credible media reports and industry reports are projecting globally medical marijuana market to be worth over $150 billion. The global tourism industry, comprising of travel, transportation, entertainment, and accommodations, Mr. Speaker, among the tourist attraction to the add globally in terms of the economy crossed over $8 trillion during 2017. We in the BVI are happy enough to bring in a couple $100 million from that. And we are beating our chests as to how well we've done. Mr. Speaker, our take is minuscule, and if our predecessors and our ancestors had not listened to the naysayers, then maybe we would have never ventured into tourism in the way that we had to. Our global financial markets, again, over $22 billion in 2019. How much of this does the BVI bring in? What share of it do we have? It is a meaningful share in the BVI context, Mr. Speaker. But we had to venture, and we had to venture big. Mr. Speaker, this shows that the market to accommodate us is large enough for each of us, all sizes. Whatever the market is, we have other areas that have gone into it, but we cannot merely say that their size made them too small to go into it. We cannot say that our size makes us too small to go into it. We have a unique opportunity, and we must take advantage of this. The fact that Jamaica, Trinidad, Barbados, Antigua and Barbuda, St. Kitts, and so many of the CARICOM neighbors are putting their houses in order and venturing into the medical cannabis industry does not need to be a deterrent to us. We have our strengths, and we must continue our strength, Mr. Speaker. So, Mr. Speaker, it is to say, and I'll bet again, my 5 minutes, I was able to keep those. No one will vote against this. It is right to do. And as we debate this, Mr. Speaker, I support this bill as I support the development of a medical cannabis industry in the BVI. I say this with an appreciation for the bigger picture, the one that requires us to get ourselves grounded in reality, the harsh reality of COVID-19 and no grants from anywhere, whether it's the UK, the US, Canada, anywhere. They have their very own challenges. Mr. Speaker, COVID-19 have leveled, so to speak, the playing field. We have areas in the United States of America, New York saying to Florida, if you're coming up to us, we're going to quarantine you for 14 days. Puerto Rico is saying, we want you to take the PCR test and be actually quarantined for 14 days before you can come to Puerto Rico. These factors must be taken into account when you look at the global economy and what we have to do to prepare ourselves. Doing nothing can never be an option. It cannot be. we have the proverbial, we seek for times for the proverbial third, fourth, and fifth economic pillar. We have an opportunity to explore this as we have passed the Virgin Islands Cannabis Licensing Act of 2020. We have to bring some uniformity and some consistency and look at how we can then transition the laws into being uniform, one in another. So, Mr. Speaker, I am pleased to bring this to the House, open the debate, and at the end of it, we will have our vote, and members will be pleased to support this in its context. Yes, in committee stage, there will be questions. There must be questions, because there's going to be something that the drafters put there that, as a House, we would not have seen. But after we come out of committee, we would have a bill that everybody will be pleased with. I so move, Mr. Speaker.
I rise to second the motion, and I reserve my comments, Mr. Speaker.
Honourable members, the bill has been moved and seconded. The minister have also given us the reasons and object of the bill. The floor is now open on the Drug Prevention and Misuse Amendment Act 2020. Calling one more time. The floor is now open for the Drugs Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2020. Haven't seen anyone. I was told that I shut off the debate too fast, so I'm giving as much time tonight as possible. And I would say who I was told that by. Haven't heard anyone or seen anyone wishing to debate the bill, I therefore call upon the minister and sponsor of the bill to wrap up.
Mr. Speaker, there is merit in introducing a bill at 10:30 p.m. We have a very short night, a very important act. And Mr. Speaker, I would like to thank every member in this House for their full support in this. And as we go to committee stage, we will see if there's anything that we can look in terms of getting these amendments even more solid. So, Mr. Speaker, thank you very much.
I thank the mover of the motion. Honourable members, it has been moved and seconded that the bill shortly entitled Drug Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2020 be now read a second time. Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it. Therefore, I call upon the clerk to read the bill a second time.
This act may be cited as a Drugs Prevention of Misuse Amendment Act 2020.
Honourable members, pursuant to Standing Orders 55-1 of the House of Assembly of the Virgin Islands, the bill now stands committed to a committee of the whole House to consider it clause by clause. This House is now in committee.